Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show, featuring Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May. Every week, you can predict the winner, the score, and compete against the crowd for prizes. Sign up on the Crowds Line app or by going to thecrowdsline.com.
Welcome to the Crowds Line College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. I'm Kevin Trimble, your moderator, and we're already into Week 10. And Week 10 is going by so fast, and here's why. Because last night, we heard about the first college football playoff poll. So we have a lot we can talk about. And like I said, we've got two Hall of Famers with us, Coach Lou Holtz and Mark May. But gentlemen, I think we need to just cut right to the chase, see what happened last week, and let's start talking about this whole new season now that that poll's out. So I'm going to lead us off right now. We're going to talk about last week 9 college football show contest. We had 4 games there. We had number 7 at the time, Georgia, versus number 9, Florida. And, Coach, you picked Georgia. Washington State at number 24, Stanford. Washington State won that one. You both picked Washington State. We'll get more into who won what. Number 2, Clemson at Florida State. That wasn't even close. Both of y'all picked Clemson. And number 3, Notre Dame, played Navy in San Diego. And both of you all picked Notre Dame. Now, Coach, for the College Football Show contest, based on winners, just winners, you were 4-0. Mark, you were 3-1 because you kind of missed out on that cocktail party in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. But if you see who got closest to the score, you know what, Mark, you won 3-1 on that one. Coach, we'll fight over that later. But I want to lead us in to that largest cocktail party in the world in Jacksonville, Florida, and you've got the Florida Gators, Georgia Bulldogs, and the SEC East. They were all saying who's going to get up there to be able to play Alabama or have the chance to play Alabama. Oh, by the way, don't forget the Wildcats. But the Bulldogs took it to them 36-17. Mark, lead us off on what happened in Jacksonville.
Well, it was a close game in the first half, but in the second half, Georgia just took over and dominated with the run game of DeAndre Swift and Elijah Holyfield. But if you look back in the game, the best quarterback won the game, and that was Jake Fromm. He didn't turn the ball over, made great decisions with the football, weren't great numbers, but 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, Coach. I thought it was a really good performance. But when you look at Georgia, they were just able to grind it out, and they were able to win the game in the second half. And Florida's still a pretty much improved football team. I don't care what anybody says. When you look at what's been done with that football team with Dan Mullen this year, it's been very impressive.
It was a pretty even game, Mark, but Florida had 3 turnovers, and Florida could not make the big plays. They are not an explosive offense. They had 1 pass over 12 yards. They had 1 run over 14 yards. Yes, a great win for Georgia, but there's an awful lot of question marks. It was nice to see Jake Fromm bounce back from a very disappointing performance against LSU. However, Georgia had 7 tries from the 1-yard line trying to run it in, and they couldn't make the 1 yard on 7 different occasions. So I don't think that Georgia is back completely yet. They'll find out when they play Kentucky this week.
Coach, you said we're going to find that one out. What we did find out is that in our second game, Coach Mike Leach and the Washington State Cougars, the Pirate with Gardner Minshew and the mustache, you know what, they 41-38, a lot closer than people may thought it was going to be, but they beat Stanford, moved up to number 1 right now in the Pac-12 North. Mark, talk about the Pirate.
Well, if you look at this game, both quarterbacks, Gardner Minshew and KJ Costello, had great games. They didn't turn the ball over. They threw touchdown passes, 7 combined, and at the end of the game, KJ Costello just made a mistake, which was not what you would expect out of a Stanford quarterback. When it's 4th and 3, you don't throw a 1-yard pass. You make sure you get the first down. But this was a very competitive game right down to the end. But you've got to hand it to Mike Leach. To go on the road, to play like this, particularly coming off a huge win at home, and everybody's patting you on the back, telling you how great you are, you're going to be ranked in the top 10, top 12, and go out there and play a tough Stanford team and come away with a victory. I think this is going to be leaps and bounds better for his football team down the road, because now they know they can go and contend, Coach. They can play with anybody in the Pac-12.
It was a great performance by both quarterbacks. I agree with you. I love KJ Costello, but I think it was a very even game. But when you look at Minshew, he completed 19 straight passes to start the second half. I didn't think there was any way in this world Washington State would win the game. With like 40 seconds to go, Stanford had the ball near field goal position, then they did get the first down, and lo and behold, a 42-yard field goal on the last play of the game. Great performance, but Washington State's not home free. If Washington could win this week, It will come down to the Washington State winner who will win that division in the Pac-12.
Well, you're going to love some spoilers. I tell you who wasn't a spoiler. Florida State.
Ouch.
Clemson went in there, and I'm going to tell you, they could have had their Florida State National Championship softball team. They didn't show up. They could have even have helped them. I mean, it was bad. 59-10. Trevor Lawrence, Clemson, they're for real. Florida State, not so much. Mark.
Come on, Kevin, it wasn't that bad. After the first quarter, it was 0-0. Florida State thought they had a chance. Then they went to the second and third quarter, it was 52-3. The game was over. And Willie Taggart told his football team, a lot of you guys quit on me. I'm not going to put up with that. I'm going to find out those guys and run those guys off, and he's absolutely right. I don't care what the score is in a football game. You never quit. You never stop trying, because guess what? When they turn on that tape the next day after the game and on Monday morning when you were watching that tape, the coaches know who quit on this football team, and the players know because they're going to be looking around that locker room. They're going to know who they can count on and who they can't count on. But if you look at Clemson, right now they're hitting on all cylinders. They haven't used their rushing attack the last 2 weeks. They haven't needed it. And the good thing about it is Trevor Lawrence has been throwing the football. Intermediate passes, deep passes, short passes. This kid's got it all, Coach. He's got every pass in the book.
He is really amazing. I think they made the right choice when they decided to go away from Kelly Bryant until the true freshman, Trevor Lawrence. He is tremendous. Clemson's not run the ball well. I only averaged 3.6 yards per rush. Now, let's talk about Florida State. Did the players quit on Florida State, or they quit on Willie Taggart? Their offensive line has been bad all year, and they made absolutely no improvement. Where's the leadership in that? 0.6 yards per rush for Florida State when you have one of the best running backs in the country in Cam Akers, and the list goes on and on. For 5 straight years, Florida State had a top 5 recruiting class, and then all of a sudden they don't have any talent. I think you have to go back to leadership, and something is wrong at Florida State. I don't know what it is, but they better get it fixed because it is embarrassing. The worst loss Florida State's ever had at home, tied for the worst loss they've ever had, period.
Minus 21 yards rushing in this game. I don't think it's Willie Taggart because the guy can coach. He coached at South Florida and won there. Goes to Oregon for 1 year, turns that program around. He can coach. Maybe it's just not the talent there. You can talk about 5-star running backs. A lot of those times, those 5 stars are really 2 stars in disguise.
Mark, I'll tell you this. I'm sure he's a fine coach. He does have a losing record overall.
Well, tell you what, they're going to have a losing record for a while until that culture changes, and maybe Willie Taggart will make that turnaround and see what happens. But I'll tell you who is on a roll right now is number 3 Notre Dame played Navy in San Diego, and it was 44-22. Navy still ran the ball, over 200 yards rushing, but I'm going to tell you, Notre Dame is on a roll. They're passing, they're running, they're throwing, they're playing defense, and that's what matters. So, Mark, you both picked Notre Dame. What's your thoughts?
I go back to the change at quarterback that was made to Ian Book. Once they made that change, everybody knows it. Everybody talks about it. Notre Dame's a different football team. Particularly they can throw the ball. But when they were up 27-0 in this game at halftime, they had a chance to really pile it on. I'm so proud of Brian Kelly. He didn't run the score up on one of our academies. This score could have probably been 55-10, and he didn't. And Navy came back. They ran the ball. It was a good game to watch. I was out in San Diego. I didn't see the game in San Diego. I was doing something else out there, but I watched it out there. And I'll tell you what, Coach, Notre Dame is for real on both sides of the ball. They've got some length. They've got some size. Look at those guys on defense. They've got some NFL talent on the other side of the ball, not just the offensive side.
Well, they're great on defense. They have 9 starters back from last year, and they were very good last year. Ian Book reminds me an awful lot of Joe Montana. He maybe doesn't have the strongest arm, but all of a sudden, he's very, very accurate. He gets the ball to the proper place. And Joe Montana led Notre Dame to a national championship in 1977. Ian Book may do the same thing because they really don't have a weakness. Number one, they have a great punter. Great place kicker. Both of them are seniors. They play outstanding defense. Their secondary shuts the receivers down. Then you look at Williams, a great running back, rushed for 143 yards. And then you look at Boykin, the great receiver. He had 6 touchdown receptions already. So there's no doubt in my mind that Notre Dame's an outstanding football team. However, whoever finishes 3 and 4 in the poll are going to have to beat both Alabama and Clemson on back-to-back weeks, and that's not real easy.
Ian Book and Joe Montana in the same sentence?
Well,
really?
Can you prove me wrong? Prove me wrong.
The only thing that they have in common is they both play for Notre Dame. That's it, period. Game, set, match.
Oh, Mark, I tell you what. He has the same ingredients. So let's remember this. Joe Montana did not start his senior season as a starting quarterback. After they lost to Ole Miss in the opening ball game, they were behind by Purdue. He was third team. He came in, saved the game. He saved the next one. And finally, they were sort of forced to start Joe Montana, very much like Ian Book.
There you have it, Mark. Another history lesson from our third history major of the crew. Well, gentlemen, that's our Week 9 college football show contest review. And as I said, Coach picking winners was 4-0. Mark was 3-1. So our folks online at home on www.thecrowdsign.com or go to our mobile app. I want to see you compete as well because we're getting ready to go through our Rapid 5 from Week 9. Our Rapid 5 from Week 9, teams still won. 5 teams still won. But Coach and Mark, God love you. We didn't do so well to include, and all mine's in the back of my head. I don't write it down or go on TV and say it. But I'm going to tell you, here's what we had. Baylor went to Morgantown to play the Mountaineers on Thursday night. Both of y'all picked the Mountaineers. Great job. Then Iowa went to Happy Valley to play Penn State. Both of y'all picked Iowa. Not great job. Purdue at Michigan State. Purdue coming off the big win over Ohio State. They're an easy pick. Not so much. Sparty won that one. Wisconsin at Northwestern. The Fighting Fitzgeralds. Got to pick the Badgers, right? Well, guess what? We all did, and Northwestern won that one. But the number 12 Kentucky Wildcats at Missouri. Mark and Coach picked Missouri. You know what? Terry Wilson and the Wildcats said, nuh-uh, not so much. They won that one 15-14. So let's start with our first game. Thursday night in Morgantown, the Baylor Bears come in, play up there in Mountaineer Field. And you know what? You've got a wounded Mountaineer, so his beard's a lot dirtier, and he's got that musket. He's all ready to go. And Will Greer and all those guys, because they had just gotten their hind end whipped about 2 weeks prior against Iowa State. What was going to happen in this Big 12 matchup? You know what happened? 58-14. It was a 31-point second quarter, and it was ugly. They just ran away with it. Mark.
David Sills and those wide receivers are outstanding for West Virginia, but it's Will Grill that really stirs the drink. 353 yards and 3 touchdown passes. I think that was key in this game. And I've talked about Tony Gibson week after week after week in his defense. They get it done. They just stoned them in the first half. It wasn't even close at halftime. It was a shutout at halftime. The game was over. It was all over but the shout, and this is a mismatch. Baylor couldn't compete with them, and I talked about it before the game. Baylor can't score with West Virginia, and West Virginia defense is much better than Baylor's.
Well, I've said so many times, you never have the same team 2 weeks in a row. How do you account for West Virginia going up and being embarrassed by Iowa State? I think they lost 31-14, but the game really wasn't as close as the score would indicate. West Virginia is an up-and-down football team, very, very explosive. I think that Baylor is not a great football team. Yeah, they can put points on the board, they play it wide open, etc., but they're not a great football team. Now, West Virginia will get a test this week against Texas. The thing you have to do, you have to be able to be the best football team in the stadium each and every week. You aren't going to be at your maximum prime. You aren't going to be all motivated, but you have to be ready to play. You only have 12 football games to play a year. Why in the world would you not be excited to play for a football game when you're in the championship race? But it's a great win for West Virginia. They got a bigger challenge this week.
Well, let's hope they can be the same team this week, Coach, because you know what? The Iowa Hawkeyes went into Happy Valley, and hey, we thought this is Iowa's going to win this one, and they just kind of handed it to Penn State. Well, Penn State's got a little bit more life. They're still 4-2 in conference, but 30-24, the Nittany Lions hang on. Mark, talk to us about that game.
Well, this isn't a typical Iowa football team. They didn't play well offensively. They turned the ball over. They made mistakes. They even had one of their linemen score a touchdown, which is not an Iowa offense. And if you look at their defense, they just gave up too many plays. Trace McSorley wasn't great in the first half, but he turned it on in the second half. And this is a quarterback that's been banged up. They didn't expect a lot out of him, but he made plays with his legs in the second half that kept him in the game and that won the game. And if you look at this football team for Penn State, they're not really great. You know, you break them down on offensive line, defensive line, up front. The guys in the trenches aren't very good, Coach, but they find a way to get it done. And Trace McSorley, without him, this team is not even a 500 football team because he's going to make plays. He's not going to let this team lose. He's going to carry this football team, and he's done it throughout the season, and that's the reason why they won this game against Iowa, because he made plays when it counted and protected the football.
I could agree with you more, Mark. When you look at a quarterback, you want to say, can he beat you with his arm? Can he beat you with his feet? Can he beat you with his mind? Can he beat you with his heart? And Trace McSorley has all 4 of those ingredients. He can throw, he can run, he's very, very smart, but the most impressive thing about him, he is exceptionally competitive. He just refused to lose it. You know what's really amazing about him, Mark, is so many times a quarterback, freshman or sophomore, are willing to run to try to win. And then they get to be juniors and seniors. They think they're pro quarterback. They don't want to run the ball. They just want to throw the ball and show people that I'm more than just an athlete. Trace McSorley is just completely the opposite. He wants to win. He'll do whatever. He doesn't slide. He goes first, head first. He gets some maximum yardage. Let's give him a great deal of credit. He's a very underrated football player, maybe one of the 5 best in the entire country, MVP. On the other hand, Iowa just does the things you usually do to win. You protect the football, you run the ball, you play outstanding defense. They don't have the big play people, Mark, and the quarterback just cannot carry that football team. Iowa's a very good football team, playing very, very well, but they just don't have the big plays, and you got to have that in today's game and age.
Coach, having something else in today's day and age is listening to Coach Lou Holtz, who says you're never going to have the same team twice. And here's something I thought about. We all should have listened to that because we all picked Purdue to beat Michigan State in our 3rd game. And you know what? Didn't happen. And all you got to do is read your book, right? Could have told you that was going to happen. You've got an unranked team, 2 unranked teams. One's coming off the biggest upset in the history of school. And they go to East Lansing and lose 23-13, and they're back down to earth. Mark, talk. Please tell us about what the Fighting Jeff Brahms, what went through their head.
Well, Jeff Brahms' defense thought they were going to play against Brian Lewicki, but they got a taste of Rocky Lombardi at the quarterback position. What a terrific name. Rocky Lombardi, coach, you can't beat a name like that. He came in and played well in his first start. But if you look at David Blau, the quarterback for Purdue, that's where the problem was. He had the 3 turnovers in this game, wasn't efficient with the football. This is a team that can't handle prosperity. What they did to Ohio State, they pounded them 49-20. Everybody told them how great they were, patting them on the back. You guys are going to go out and run the table. You have won 4 games in a row after losing the first 3. No, that didn't happen in this game. They go on the road. Michigan State's defense finally played like Michigan State's defense again because they were one of the top run defenses in the country before they won against Michigan. They were one of the top overall defenses in the Pac-10 and in the Big Ten, and they finally played up to their potential in this game. And I'll tell you what, Purdue is still a good football team, but they've got to continue to do the things that they do so they can win football games, and that's protect the football well. And I think they learned a grave lesson in this football game. You can't win if you turn the football over.
3 turnovers, there's no way in this world you could win. But you don't have the same football team each and every week. And as I said, what happens when you win a game like against Ohio State? Everybody's talking about last week. Nobody's talking about next week. And then you look at Michigan State. Rocky Lombardi. You change a quarterback, you change the whole attitude of everybody. I mean, their defense, their running back. He threw for over 300 yards in his first start, and he's a freshman. And just the whole Michigan State team mentality, their attitude, the way they played, the enthusiasm they had for the game was completely different than anything I've seen from Michigan State this year. So let's see if that will continue. Great win for Michigan State. Very, very disappointing for Purdue.
Well, it's disappointing as any thoughts that Purdue had to compete in the Big Ten West. Kind of took a step back, but I'll tell you who's didn't is the Fighting Pat Fitzgeralds of Northwestern, the Wildcats. Wisconsin goes in there in our 4th game. Number 20, Wisconsin, goes into Northwestern and loses 31-17. So Northwestern is now leading in first place, 5-1 in the Big Ten West. So, Mark, talk about these kids in Evanston, Illinois, and what they're doing.
Hold on. Smoke and mirrors here, Kevin. Smoke and mirrors. Both teams had 3 turnovers in this game. It was an ugly football game. And if you look at Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs and probably one of the top 3 running backs in the nation, he doesn't turn the ball over. Fumbles twice in this football game. And then before the game, we thought Alex Hornibrook was a game-time decision, the quarterback for Wisconsin. Just before the game, because of the concussion, he decides not to play in this game. So a lot of negative things in this game for Wisconsin, not going in the right direction. But here's the key. Pat Fitzgerald, great football coach, great football player in college football Hall of Famer, always has his team ready to play. Smart football team, aggressive football team. They usually don't make mistakes. They overcame their mistakes in this football game. And guess what? This wasn't one of those, oh, by the way, games we're going to look ahead to Notre Dame. They grinded it out, and they played, and they found a way to win. And they're just getting ready for Notre Dame. They're just lying in the weeds, Coach. They got a nice win against Wisconsin, gearing up for Notre Dame this week. And that's a great win for Northwestern. I'll tell you what, for both teams to turn the ball over like that and to go in there and play like that and grind it out, Northwestern's one of those teams, they're not winning pretty, but they're finding ways to win.
It was an ugly game as Northwestern threw 3 interceptions. You mentioned Wisconsin lost 3 fumbles. This is the same Northwestern team, let's say, that lost to Duke and lost to Akron. Akron at 4-3 in the Mid-American Conference. Northwestern's not a great football team.
That
they
was
don't
in
have
September.
a great play. But they do play together. They play smart. They play very, very intelligently. But they're not a great football team by any stretch of the imagination, Mark. And you look at them, they're up 1 week, they're down 1 week. You know, they have a great performance against Michigan. Then they barely beat Nebraska in overtime. Then they have a great performance against, I don't remember who. Then they beat Rutgers 18-15 and was lucky to win that game. They're up and they're down. Great football team don't. So they were up last week. That means they're going to be down against Notre Dame, and if they aren't, Notre Dame will put them down anyway.
You look across the landscape of college football, though, this year, Mark, and you have to agree. And, Coach, you said there's a lot of teams winning ugly, but you know what? I'll take an ugly win over an ugly loss any day. So let's talk about finding ways to win. The number 12 Kentucky Wildcats go out to Columbia, Missouri with a bunch on their mind because they know if they win, they're playing Georgia at home the following week for the SEC championship. And you got Drew Lock. He can throw the ball, going to be in the NFL. And you know what? They found a way to win with their quarterback throwing a pass at the very end, 15-14 on the last play of the game, untimed play to be matter of fact. And Kentucky's now headed to Georgia's going to play Kentucky now for the SEC East Championship on Saturday. But Kentucky beats Missouri and gets it done. Though ugly, they got it done. Mark.
The Kentucky Wildcats have treated me through the month of October like the stock market has treated me like the month of October. Up and down and up and down. When I pick them, they win. When I don't pick them, they win. When I pick them to lose, they win. So this is a football team. They find ways to win to grind it out, and you thought Benny Snell Jr. would lead this football team after Terry Wilson goes through a game, completing 3 out of 9 passes for 18 yards. All of a sudden he comes out, and they finally let him go. They turn him loose offensively. Throws the ball for 267 yards, the most in his career, finally giving him an opportunity to throw the ball because they had to do it. This is an offense that can throw the ball if they give him an opportunity to throw the ball. It doesn't have to be vertically all the time, but they've got to push the ball down the field to open it up for Benny Snell Jr. At the end of this football game, I think they finally found their leader now offensively in Terry Wilson, the quarterback, because he got it done in crunch time. They're down 14-3 in the fourth quarter late. They find a way to get 2 touchdowns and win the game at the end of the game. That's true leadership. Now they've got a leader on offense.
I never thought that I'd ever see Kentucky throw for 200 yards, let alone 267 yards, and average 3.5 yards per rush. The one thing that is consistent is their defense. And ladies and gentlemen, they have a linebacker named Josh Allen who's as good as anybody. He had 11 tackles, 9 solos, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. He's a great football player. But Kentucky was fortunate enough to win. I don't care how you twist it or turn it. The fact that Drew Lock did not have a great performance as quarterback for Missouri is a testament to the great defense from Kentucky. However, they're down by 13. Not too much time left in the fourth quarter. They run a punt back for a touchdown around 70 yards. Now, that's a great performance, but it shouldn't have happened. Then they come down, last play of the game, they throw a pass, and it's incomplete. And all of a sudden, Missouri celebrates, but they throw a flag. A very, very questionable pass interference call, I might add. Then they hit the tight end on a quick out. So they don't get the call, they lose the game. They don't run the punt back, they lose the game. But let's give Kentucky credit. They won the football game. But boy, Missouri lost it as well.
Coach, you know what? I think on this subject, I'm a little bit smarter than you because this weekend we're both going to be in Kentucky. I'm praising the Wildcats while I'm here in Lexington.
Yeah, I went to school to eat my lunch. You know, you're right on that, Mark. But then again, I've heard what you said about Notre Dame and Ohio State, and yet you were going to Columbus and South Bend. So I'm not going to make you magna cum laude yet. But I will see you But Georgia will have fans too. There's nothing against Kentucky. All I'm doing, I'm on this TV to state my opinion, what I've learned, what I see, how I feel. See, I don't play politics like you, Mark. I just try to listen to the viewers, and give them the best advice I can give them.
Oh, who are you, Ralph Cramden now? Now you're throwing it in reverse?
No, I tell you what. I love you, Mark.
Coach, a lot of our audience, Mark and Coach, don't know who Ralph Cramden is, but I will tell you, we're here to inform and entertain. And you know what? Sometimes we're not going to let truth get in the way of a good story. But, gentlemen, that's our college football show contest and our rapid five contest. As I said, it was tough picking for both of you gentlemen. But you know what? We had 24% of our contestants this week that picked all 9 correctly. So we're going to see how that's going to work out. But I want to come up with one more thing before we end this segment. I want to talk about our top 25. Well, as we know, last night was the first 2018 college football playoff poll. So we talk about winners and losers all the time. Well, as we know, the first 2, no question, Alabama, Clemson. But then number 3, a lot of people before said, oh, it's going to be Notre Dame. Well, guess what? It was LSU, even though they've got 1 loss. And then Notre Dame's number 4. Number 5, Michigan. You know, Michigan's got 1 loss too, Notre Dame. But then Georgia, Oklahoma, and number 8 is the Washington State Cougars. And if you look, kind of creep on down just a little bit, Kentucky Wildcats and then Ohio State at 10. So with that, it's a big change from what we saw in the AP a little bit, especially when you get down to 8 to 12, 8 to 10. So Coach Mark, I'm going to start with you first, Coach. Who do you see as the big winners in this? And you know, who's got a lot more work to do but could get in there?
Well, I think when you look at LSU, you put them at number 3, even though they have a loss to Florida, and they're a 15-point underdog to number 1. You mean to tell me the number 3 best team in the country is a 15-point underdog at home? That hadn't happened in 50 years at LSU. I tell you who the real loser is, UCF. They're undefeated, have the longest losing streak, have a great quarterback in McKenzie, and they're ranked number 12. I'll tell you right now, they beat Pitt 42-14. They would have beaten North Carolina even worse, but that game was canceled because of the hurricane. And I want to tell you something else. You don't want to play the University of Houston. Houston and UCF will be one of the great games in the championship game. I think that whoever finishes 3 and 4, and that's irrelevant right now, I think it definitely will be Notre Dame. I don't know who will be number 4. Will be Michigan, Ohio State, will be Oklahoma. I don't know. However, whoever finishes 3 and 4 are going to have to beat Clemson on one week, Alabama on the next week, and that's a very difficult task for anybody, even if you're in the NFL.
I think, yeah, you look at LSU that lost to Florida, as Coach mentioned. You know, this is a team that they win, but they win ugly. They've got a formula for winning. They're not explosive on offense at all. And you know they're going to lose this weekend against Alabama. Everybody knows that. Ed O's did a great job there. I think that they're overrated in this poll. I think a team that's underrated, if you look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a close loss to Texas in a big rivalry game. They're still down at number 7. I think they should be creeping up there around 5 in that 5 spot. And if you look at Notre Dame, always a little overrated. They really haven't beaten anybody that's in the top 20 except Michigan. That was the first game of the season. You know, you look at the top teams right here. Georgia's one of those teams. I like Michigan the way they're playing. I go by the eye test throughout the season. The first week, the second week of the season, the teams are just starting to get in their groove. Once you get to the 4th week, you can find out exactly what they are. The way that teams are playing right now at this point of the season, those are the teams that I'm impressed with. Alabama and Clemson, without a doubt. There's no question there. All the rest of the teams that are on the list, they're almost interchangeable. You can put anybody anywhere else. But I'm looking at this as my view. I've got Oklahoma in the top 4 in my view, and the reason why is because that's a team offensively that can play with Clemson and Alabama. They may not beat them, but they can play with them because they can score with them, and they're used to being in high-scoring games. The rest of the teams on that list, forget about it.
Hey, Mark, let's remember this. Michigan has a great defense. I mean, they are outstanding. And one of their best defensive players hadn't played in the last couple of weeks. But I think Michigan can play with anybody in the country. But I agree with you on Oklahoma for one reason. They have changed the defensive coordinator from it went from Stoops to Ruffin McNeil. Ruffin McNeil was the interim coach at Texas Tech, was head coach at East Carolina. He's the guy that hired the head coach now at Oklahoma. And defensively, last week they played an outstanding football game, and I think they're getting better and better. I think that number 4 will either be Oklahoma or will be Michigan. And Michigan's defense is so good, and Shea Patterson is doing the things like Joe Burrow does at LSU. They need to turn Shea Patterson loose. He can run and throw, and I think they will at the appropriate time.
I've got Michigan in my top 4, Coach, but the only thing that scares me about this Michigan defense, they haven't played an explosive offense yet. I want to see them play a very good
Notre
offense.
Dame?
Like I said, they haven't played.
Remember,
who was quarterback at Notre Dame at that time when they played him? Brandon Wimbush. That's an explosive offense?
Hey, stop confusing me with facts.
Coach, it's like I tell my friend, I was going to say, that was a Wimbush Notre Dame. I like to tell my friends, I've been to Notre Dame Stadium, but I always have to preface with, no offense, but it was Bob Davie Notre Dame. But still, I went. Anyway, I digress. Well, there we have it. So we've got the first poll out. We see the top 8. There's going to be big changes. LSU beats Alabama. I'll tell you it's going to be number 4, Alabama, probably, because LSU will be number 1. But all these games that we're getting ready to pick here in our Week 10 College Football Show contest, in our Week 10 Rapid 5 contest, they're all going to have implications. It's going to look a whole lot different. We already know it. Maybe not so much at the top, very top, but it's going to look different starting on Monday. But let's go down right now. Here's our Week 10 contest. We have number 1 Alabama at number 3 LSU, Death Valley at night. Everybody knows the biggest game of the year. Number 6 Georgia at number 9 Kentucky, Kroger Field down in Lexington. Oh, by the way, Breeders' Cup's going on. Oh, by the way, Mark May and Lou Holtz are going to be in town for Davos in the Bluegrass at the Castle. It is the biggest weekend since 1950. And I'm going to tell you, number 13 West Virginia Mountaineers are at 17 Texas. Fortunes change. It's amazing. We didn't pick Texas, Oklahoma last week. We thought that was just going to be a blowout. They're going to take care of business. Big change there. And number 4, Notre Dame are going to play unranked Northwestern up in Evanston, Illinois. I'm sure that weather's going to be peachy. So let's start off our first game. Number 1 Alabama at LSU. As we know, 83rd meeting since first one happened 1895. This might surprise you, maybe not. Alabama leads 52-25 with 5 ties. And this is pretty much okay. Who's number 1 in the SEC West? Who's going to go to the SEC Championship? 1 versus 3 in Death Valley. And I think this game comes down to can LSU get to the fourth quarter? If Tua is still on the field in the fourth quarter, it might be like Rocky II when they rang the bell and he says, "Ladies and gentlemen, stand by for World War III." You remember that? Because no one's ever gotten them to the fourth quarter. We're going to see what's going to happen. Mark, lead us through Death Valley right now. Talk to us about Saturday night.
First and foremost, there won't be any excuses by either team. They should both be healthy. They're both coming off of byes. Tua Tagovailoa has the knee injury, but he's healthy right now. Jalen Hurts is healthy right now. If you look at this Alabama offense, no one's really slowed them down. It's pick your poison. Are you going to stop the run with Damian Harris or Najee Harris? Are you going to stop the pass with Jerry Jeudy in that fine passing course? And now Irv Cross Jr., the tight end, is doing a terrific job catching the football. How do you stop this offense? You can't stop the quarterback because they're too deep there. So if you're Dave Aranda, the defensive coordinator for LSU, you've got to decide what you're going to do. You're going to load up the box and stop the run, or you've got to put 3 or 4 or 5 guys deep to try to stop the pass and confuse Tua Tagovailoa. I don't think that's going to happen in this game. I think the key is they're going to try to play balanced defensively, but that's not going to be enough to stop this offense because they keep coming at you like waves. That's why they're the Alabama Crimson Tide, Coach. They're going to come at you like the ocean, wave after wave after wave. They're going to roll over LSU in this game. It's not going to be close. It's not going to be pretty. Tagovailoa is going to be on the sidelines in the fourth quarter because he's only got to play in the fourth quarter once in his career, and that's last year's national championship game. Alabama wins 40-16.
Well, there's never been a horse that can't be rode. There's never been a rider that can't be thrown. LSU has a chance in this football game, Mark, but I agree with you about Alabama being so explosive. They have 5 receivers averaging over 17 yards a catch. And the thing that Tua does, his quarterback ranking is 238. I mean, that is so much higher than anybody else. He's been unbelievable. And what they do, they run the play-action pass, and where he is not just his ability to throw, his ability to make decisions. He can decide whether he's going to give the ball, whether he's going to throw it. However, the offensive line at Alabama is not as aggressive. They don't come off the ball and maul you like they did in years past. Alabama's defense, very good. They have 12 interceptions. That's very high for the few number of games they played. But here's what LSU has to do to win the football game, Mark. Go play your normal defense. Do not let them run after they catch. Alabama will not beat LSU by throwing and catching. If I'm playing against Alabama and I have LSU's personnel, because let's remember, LSU has some great defensive backs that can match up with the great receivers from Alabama man to man. Make no mistake about it. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, I got Greedy Williams. Greedy Williams is flat great. What is going to happen, though, the great linebacker from LSU, got called for targeting in the second half last week, and he will not be able to play in the first half against Alabama. This guy's an All-American. I hope the game's not over by the time he gets into the game. But you mark it down. If Alabama cannot run after they catch, LSU has a very good chance to get in the fourth quarter. I don't think they can stop them and worry just about runs after the catch. If you're coaching against Alabama, I don't care how many times they throw it, they will not beat us throwing and catching. They beat us because they run after they catch. If we stop that, we have a chance to win. But I'm going to pick Alabama 38-14, but I will not be surprised if LSU wins this football game.
38-14, but you're not surprised if they're going to win a football game, so they're losing by 24 points.
Because unless they're listening to this TV show and saying, that Coach Holtz is right. We've got to stop them after the catch. And if they do that, I'll change my prediction.
Coach, you in week 1, you ended your prediction with LSU Miami and said, you know what, I really think that LSU could win. I'm going to pick Miami, but I think LSU could win. You said that. Look what happened. They took them to the woodshed. So, here we go. Our next game is almost as big as that one. You've got number 6 Georgia coming into Lexington to play the Kentucky Wildcats. You have the SEC East Championship game right there in the Bluegrass on a huge, huge weekend. I say 1950 because that's 1950. Kentucky won the SEC Championship in football. Had a coach named Bryant. Heard he was pretty good at some other school too. But number 6 Georgia, number 6 Georgia, 7-1, and they lost to LSU behind the woodshed. Kentucky's also 7-1. They lost Texas A&M in overtime. You got big, strong, tall quarterback Jake Fromm. He looks a little bit like that Drew Lock guy out there at Missouri. Kentucky took care of that. We're going to see how that goes. Kentucky's about running the ball and about playing defense. They try to win by a slow beatdown. Georgia has got some big plays, and they're much improved from Florida. They showed they were much improved during that Florida game. But my question to both of y'all is, they going to mix it up, put Justin Fields in? Or are they just going to kind of keep doing what they're doing? And the Wildcats, you know what? They threw for 200 yards. That's a big deal. You know what? Maybe they can throw and run now. What's going to happen down in Lexington, Mark?
I'll tell you what, in this game, you can always say you can throw the record books out the window, throw the stats out the window, and everything else. Guess what? This is the game that Mark Stoops and Kentucky have probably been waiting for throughout his entire career, and I'm going to tell you why. If you look at Georgia, this is a football team that's just coming off the big victory against Florida, and everybody's patting them on the back. Yeah, you crushed Florida in the second half. That's our big rivalry game. That's the game we look forward to every year. It's a big cocktail party out there. You guys did a terrific job. You're riding high. If you look at Kentucky, they struggled in this football game all game until the fourth quarter. They came out and found a way to win, to grind a way to win. They're lying in the weeds right now. It's the perfect time for Mark Stoops and this Kentucky team to get going. Because right now, if you're Kirby Smart, do you stop the run? Do you put 8 and 9 in the box and try to stop Benny Snell? Or now you've got a quarterback that can throw the football, that's proven he can push the football down the field. It's dealer's choice for this Kentucky offense. If I'm Kentucky, I come out throwing the ball to get Georgia on their heels in this football game. I think Kentucky right now is rolling. They're finding ways to win. There's always that team every year, Coach, that you look at and say, they're not doing it pretty. How do they win that game? Oh, they shouldn't have won that game. But each and every week when you look at the scoreboard at the end of the game, Kentucky 24, Georgia 21.
I give Kentucky an awful lot of credit. I mean, it's been a marvelous year for them. And the good thing is, in the last game they played Louisville. Louisville's not very, very good this year. So usually that would be a challenge for Kentucky. But, Kentucky has not given up more than 20 points in a game and all the entire year. And their one loss was 20-14, I think, A&M in overtime. However, for the last 3 weeks, Mark, Kentucky's not scored more than 15 points. They were lucky. They special teams very, very good. I think that Georgia will win the football game. And let me tell you, this is the biggest game, and we all said for years, in Kentucky. But they've never been there before. They don't know how to always handle that, Mark. So you have to learn how to compete. Then you have to learn how to win. Then you have to learn how to handle winning. In the big environment, you get caught up with all the lights and all the anticipation, the fans, and everybody's calling you for tickets, and all your buddies in high school want to have a chance to visit with you before the game. And so I don't think Kentucky will be able to handle that pressure and that limelight, whereas Georgia's been there before. Jake Fromm's been there before. I look for Georgia to beat Kentucky 27-14, but that will not diminish the outstanding year that Kentucky's had.
I'm going to go back in history a little bit to 1982 when there's a Washington Redskins coach against a Miami Dolphin coach, Don Shula, a Hall of Famer. The Redskins hadn't been there. They don't know how to win. They don't know how to get over the hump. But they won the Super Bowl. They beat Don Shula with Joe Gibbs at the helm. This can happen. It's happened before. History repeats itself. I'm looking for Kentucky in the upset.
Now, don't get me wrong, Mark, but Kentucky doesn't have the Hogs, and you were part of them in that offensive line. Let me tell you something else. That wasn't the first big game. You had a lot of big games to win the conference championship to be able to get there. You had been there. You've been able to handle it. We'll see, Mark. We'll see.
Well,
You're
Coach,
upsetting me. I want to tell you, I'm losing my emotions.
Coach, Kentucky offensive line coach John Schlarman from Fort Thomas Islands. He's got some hogs. Maybe not big hogs, but he's got some hogs. But this 72nd meeting is going to be exciting. And Kentucky's played the number one team there before and beat them in 2007, and I was there in 3 or 4 overtimes. They beat number one LSU at the time. But we'll see how that's going to go, and we know it's going to be exciting. But is it going to be exciting as number 13 West Virginia is going at number 17 Texas? Now, we thought this would be even bigger because Texas, we didn't even talk about them. They go to Oklahoma State last week, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. They got beat, and it's the 8th meeting for these two. Goes back to 1956, and West Virginia has a 4-3 lead. But West Virginia is not out of the Big 12 race. They got one loss, and they got to keep winning, but they've got Texas. And then, after that, they got Oklahoma State, and then they've got Oklahoma, whereas Texas is going to go to Texas Tech, then Iowa State. Oh, by the way, a little giant killer there. So West Virginia put a beat down on Baylor. Texas barely beat Baylor. We'll see how this is going to go. Mark, talk about things in Austin, Texas.
Well, if you put Texas's schedule on a curve, they lose to Maryland at the beginning of the season, then it goes up, and they win a bunch of games. Then the last couple of weeks it's going back down. They struggle against Baylor, which is a team that West Virginia just blew out. And then if you look at last week at Oklahoma State, they get beat. This is a team defensively that can't stop the long ball. And defensively, they're going to see a lot of it in this game with Will Grier. If you look at West Virginia offensively, they have not one, not two, but 3 wide receivers with 500 yards or more receiving. That's going to be the killer in this game. It's going to be up to the offensive line of West Virginia to protect Will Grier long enough to throw the ball vertically. You've got David Sills, Marcus Sims, Gary Jennings Jr. at wide receiver. Those are all 3 tall wide receivers that can go vertical with a football, that can stretch the defense. And for Texas, when they play offenses like this, they definitely struggle because they found out last week against Oklahoma State, this is a more potent offense at West Virginia than Oklahoma State have. I think Texas goes down in this game. West Virginia wins at 37-30 because of West Virginia's offense. Texas is playing extremely well on defense, but West Virginia's offense is lights out, Coach.
I believe that you watch the games on Saturday, but some of your logic leads me to believe maybe you don't, because let's look at Oklahoma State, Mark. 31 points the first half. How many did they get the second half? Well, actually, what happened was Texas shut them down. Matter of fact, Texas would have won that football game had the quarterback not kept the ball on 2 different occasions, one to score the go-ahead touchdown and the other one to pick up a critical first down. I think Texas is a very, very good football team. Yeah, they did not play very well last week. They have to win this game to have a rematch against Oklahoma. And I know that the 2 teams going to be in the final is going to be Oklahoma and it's going to be West Virginia, it's going to be Texas. I personally believe it's going to be Texas. We're going to have a reenactment of the shootout, the Red River rivalry. I look for Texas to win the game 31-30. Everything you say about West Virginia, I agree. And Texas does have trouble playing the deep ball, Mark, and the reason is because of the technique they use. Instead of pinning the receiver on the sideline playing the ball, they wait for the receiver, then they try to knock it out of his hands when they can, and that constantly leads to pass interference calls. So despite that, I think that Texas, an earlier quarterback, will run the football that's at home, and there's a big difference when you're playing at home than when you're playing on the road. Texas to win the game 31-30.
I always like your logic about Texas played great in the second half and Oklahoma State put up 31 points in the first half. How many quarters in a football game?
I don't remember, Mike,
I think
but
there's
I believe
4, but at
it's
the end of the game, what's the scoreboard say?
I agree. Okay, we'll see what happens in this, Mark. But I want to tell you, you have to look that Texas was not ready to play that football game. Whatever they were doing on defense, they made the adjustment. They shut them out basically the second half. They dominated the game. When you look at what Texas did the second half, you think this game's over. It wasn't. Texas is a very, very good football team. They're very well coached. They have a good offensive line, a good defensive line. I worry about their secondary playing the ball in the air, but being at home, Texas will find a way to win this football game. The spirit is back, the pride's back at Texas, and they will prevail. I hate to say that against the state I was born in. I cheer for West Virginia, but I got to be honest, Mark. My grandson played at Texas.
Well, Coach, my mother-in-law just showed up at my house, so there ain't no way I'm pulling against the Mountaineers. Plus, they have the number one scoring defense in the Big 12. Could be a good game down there in Austin. But our last and fourth game of the Week 10 college football show, I think it's a bigger game than people think or give it credit. Number 4, Notre Dame, 8-0, undefeated, playing unbelievable football, is going to play an evening game at 7:15 in Evanston, Illinois, Ryan Field against Northwestern, because Northwestern right now is 5-3, but they're 5-1 in the Big Ten West. And you know what? Do they have national championship aspirations? Yeah, the freshmen do for maybe their junior or senior year, but it's not happening this year. But can they go play and still win the Big Ten if they keep winning? Yes, they can. So this is a pretty exciting game, and you know they win ugly. They play ugly the whole season. Sometimes they win. 3 of them they've lost. So Notre Dame, different story. Ian Book comes in. It's like, you know, part 2. So you're going to say, is it the Ian Book Notre Dame or is it the Wimbush Notre Dame? But this Ian Book Notre Dame with Dexter Williams, because Dexter Williams was on a sabbatical, you know, didn't play for a little while. They're on fire. They're on fire. So what's the Fighting Pat Fitzgeralds from Northwestern going to do? We're going to see. Mark, talk to us about this one.
Oh, you said it all, Kevin. Northwestern has no chance. Ian Book, Notre Dame, they'll bring all those Notre Dame fans over to Evanston. Brian Kelly comes in with a team that just beat Navy, big nationally televised game. But let me tell you this, Coach. They're traveling all the way back from San Diego after a tough game against Navy. You know what Navy does? They run that AAA option and they cut players on defense. Guess what? Notre Dame's going to be soaking in their wounds. They're going to be ice bagging it all weekend long. They think they're looking at Northwestern. Oh, it's a team with Thorson, a quarterback. He's got 10 interceptions, only 10 touchdown passes. They can't compete with a great Fighting Irish. But I'm going to tell you this. Pat Fitzgerald has Notre Dame and the Fighting Irish exactly where he wants them. He's got them in his own phone booth right at home. Notre Dame's going to overlook this football team because they're going to say, Northwestern are not very good. Like you said before, Coach, they lost to Duke, they lost to Akron, they can't compete with us, but Northwestern's going to find a way to win it. Pat Fitzgerald, they're going to win it ugly, Coach. They're going to win it on special teams, they're going to win it on defense, and they're going to win it on turnovers. And guess what? When this game's close in the fourth quarter, you're not going to get those Notre Dame home football calls by the official. Northwestern's going to get them, and they're going to upset Notre Dame 32-29.
You sound like a comedian out of work, Mark. Logic that you use. The officials, number one, they're Big Ten officials. I believe they'll be the ACC officials, Mark.
Yes,
visiting
Notre
team,
Dame officials.
The ACC officials. But Notre Dame, when you're in a title race like that, you play every game. I mean, you can't afford. And what we tell our football team, and this is true, every time you win a game, the next game becomes even bigger. The reason that this game is big is because Notre Dame beat Navy. After they beat Northwestern, the next game will be even big, playing Florida State. And then eventually, each time it gets bigger. And Notre Dame pays attention to what they're doing. They also understand that when Eric Parseghian was at Northwestern, he beat Notre Dame 4 years in a row, and finally Notre Dame hired Eric Parseghian, and that was the best move they made. I have great respect for Pat Fitzgerald. He's done a tremendous job. But they're not explosive enough on offense. They turn the ball over too much on defense, and Notre Dame will win the game, I think, 34-17, and I'm giving Northwestern credit for playing outstanding, playing at home. Notre Dame's not used to playing on the road, but the game will be at Soldier Field, I think, not at Northwestern Stadium. Notre Dame only plays 2 true away games, I believe, Southern Cal and Virginia Tech. But Notre Dame wins the game 34-17. And Mark, I'll give you a chance to get your money back, but it doesn't matter. I'm not betting you anymore because you don't pay anyway.
Well, this will be the 49th game, the first one happening in 1889, and Notre Dame leads this series 37-9-2. But Northwestern has won the last two meetings. The one before that was in 1995, Northwestern beat Notre Dame. And then in 2014, Northwestern beat Notre Dame. So you never know what's going to happen, Coach. We're all history majors here. We'll see how it's going to go. Now, that is our fourth game of our college football show contest, and there you have it. And it's going to be a big Week 10 with our Rapid 5 contest coming up next. Now, Week 10 Rapid 5 is pretty much just as exciting as our college football show contest because a lot of these games all have implications. Number 14, Penn State at number 5, Michigan in the Big House. Number 7, Oklahoma is going to play unranked Texas Tech. But you know what? Talk about I don't know what the over-under on that. I think it's 200. Number 3, unranked Temple at tomorrow night at number 12, UCF. That's a Thursday night game in Orlando. And don't be surprised if, we'll get more into that, but don't worry, don't overlook Temple. Unranked Stanford at unranked Washington. Now, doesn't that sound kind of odd? Unranked Stanford, unranked Washington, but guess what? This has implications in the Pac-12 North. Can't win a national championship, win a conference. Always focus on winning. But this next one is a sort of a championship in itself. Air Force is playing at Army, and we all saw Air Force beat Navy 35-7 earlier in the year. If Air Force beats Army, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is going home to them. If not, we're going to see if Army plays Navy later in the year. But let's start us off. Number 14, Penn State at Michigan. Michigan's number 5 right now. They're just on the outside looking in. They're seeing that Christmas dinner in there, the playoff. It's looking good. They know we just got to keep winning and keep winning. Penn State, do they get lucky at home against Iowa? And Iowa gives them the game. I don't know. They had those 2 losses though. But Michigan is running, and then Shea Patterson will throw it up. But more importantly, they're playing some solid defense. I don't know. Trace McSorley, just tackle him on every play, and pretty much probably going to win the game because, as you said, Coach, he's the best player on their team. Mark, talk to us about what's going down in the Big House with Penn State.
Well, if you look at Michigan defensively, they're one of the top defenses in the country right across the board. Their defensive coordinator, Don Brown's done a fabulous job. Again, he's done it year in and year out. And if you look at this offense from Penn State, it's all Trace McSorley, and that's it. They have nothing else. So if you can stop him and slow him down, Penn State's going to have a tough time scoring against this Michigan defense. Offensively, if you look at Michigan, they haven't scored less than 38 points in the Big House, Coach. They know how to get it done at home. They can throw the ball with Shea Patterson. They can run the ball with Karen Higdon. I like Michigan in this game. I don't even think it's going to be close. I think they're going to embarrass Penn State 51-17.
Well, I like Michigan. I think the fact their defense is so outstanding. Shea Patterson's only thrown 1 interception in Big Ten play, and that's very impressive to me. So when you look at their defense, you look at Shea Patterson. But the other thing, I think Michigan's offensive line is getting much, much better. Penn State was lucky to beat Iowa in certain respects. I look for Michigan to win the game 31-14.
Well, there you have it, and it's called Penn State's opportunity to play a spoiler. And I guess who else can play a spoiler? Cliff Kingsbury. What do they say? He's the best looking coach in college football. But Oklahoma, number 7, is playing Texas, and they're playing in Jerry's World in Dallas. And like I said, over-under on this one might be 100. Texas Tech, though, they've proven they're one of the few Big 12 teams that can play some defense. We know they can play offense, whereas with Oklahoma, we know they can play offense, but defense was so bad they had to get rid of one of their coaches. So now you got Ruffin McNeil. Can he make a difference against Texas Tech and Cliff Kingsbury and Alan Bowman, the freshman? If he's healthy, he can sling that thing. And Texas Tech, they better not be overlooking them. Mark.
I like Oklahoma in this game, and the reason why is not only because of Kyler Murray, the quarterback. He gets it done, completing 73% of his passes, Coach. But C.D. Lamb and Marquise Brown, outstanding explosive wide receivers on the outside, very difficult to defend. But I think the key, as you mentioned it before, Ruffin McNeil. In the last two games defensively, they've given up a total of 34 points. And Mike Stoops' last 2 games defensively, they've given up a total of 78 points. So this defense is playing with better confidence. It doesn't matter the competition. On both sides of the ball, Oklahoma is too dominant. I think Oklahoma wins this game and crushes Texas Tech 51-31.
Well, I agree with you on that. I think Ruffin McNeil's done a tremendous job. As we mentioned, he was an excellent defensive coordinator under Coach Leach when he was at Texas Tech. And offensively, Kyle Murray is just doing a tremendous job. You look at his passer rating, it's up there, 227. He's the closest to Tua at Alabama of anybody as far as pass efficiency is concerned. But I just think Texas Tech is not good enough on defense. Not sure the quarterback is going to be healthy enough to play, but I look for Oklahoma to win the game 47-21. I think Oklahoma or Michigan is going to be in the Final Four.
Well, I know who wants to be in the Final Four, and that's number 12, UCF. And they're hosting Temple Thursday night, tomorrow night in Orlando. And, don't overlook, everybody talks in the AAC here about UCF. Well, one team obviously we'll talk about later is Houston. Don't overlook them, but don't overlook this Temple team and Jeff Collins, who I said last week is bringing some Philly tough to these guys. They're number 22 in total defense in the country. But as Coach, you said last week and 2 weeks ago, UCF is with Mackenzie Milton is a great team. Without him, you know what? They're only a good team. Well, you know what? He's questionable. Is he injured? His backup is a redshirt freshman, Daryl Mack. But likewise, the leading running back for Temple, Raquel Armstead, he's questionable as well. So we're going to see how this goes, because right now is it going to be Temple against a great team, Temple against a good team, and what happens in this AAC matchup, Mark?
Well, if you look at this football game, Mackenzie Milton, if he plays, you said he was questionable in this game. If he plays, I really like UCF in this football game. That's the juggling act in this football game. But here's the key to this football game. Temple has played big games this year. Coming off the overtime win against Cincinnati was a huge game for them, because Cincinnati was undefeated this past week. And if you look at earlier in the season, they did defeat Maryland, a pretty good football team. But the short week traveling on the road, regardless if Mackenzie Milton plays or not, I'm taking the home team in this game, Coach. I think UCF gets it done on special teams and defense, and they get it done 37-28 over Temple.
I think UCF is going to be so mad that the poll came out and they're ranked number 12. They deserve to be better. They're going to be highly motivated. If Mackenzie Milton plays, I would feel comfortable them playing against anybody. Let's remember, this is basically the same UCF football team that went undefeated last year and smashed Auburn in a major bowl last year. Same team. I think that you have to look at Temple. Let's see now. They lost to Villanova and they lost to Buffalo. I mean, they've lost some conference games also, but they can't run the football. Anthony LaRusso, the quarterback, performed miracles against Cincinnati, throwing the pass, 25-yard touchdown pass right as the game ended, then throwing the 20-yard touchdown pass in overtime to win. Yeah, that's great. But UCF is a very, very good football team, very good on defense. With Mackenzie Milton, I look for UCF to ramble 48-14.
Well, there you have it. The AAC it's going to be live for the rest of the year, and then we have our fourth game in the Rapid Five, unranked Stanford at Washington, and this is for can we get up there? Stanford 3-2 in conference, Washington 4-2 in conference. So this is for a little pride, and hey, can we win this conference championship? 89th meeting goes back to 1893. But here's what's interesting. It's 42-42 and 4 ties. So you know what? This is a tiebreaker, if anything. Get up in the conference and break the tie. Been a long time since they were unranked. But if you look at these two teams, KJ Costello, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. The big interesting thing is Bryce Love. Bryce Love was going to be second in the Heisman last year. You know what? He's hurt all the time. It's not his fault. That happens. He's way, way down. And then saw what happened with Washington. You'll talk about this, Mark, with Jake Browning. He's their leader. Had a little trouble last week, and then Myles Gaskin is hurt sometimes. These two wounded teams are going to go at it because it means something to them, and they can still win the conference. Talk to us, Mark.
Both teams are coming off frustrating losses. If you look at Stanford, their loss to Washington State was extremely frustrated. And how about Washington's loss 12-10 to Cal? They could only put up 10 points against this Cal defense. Jake Browning completed less than 50% of his passes. Those games are on the road for them. I think they're going to be a different football team. If you look at them at home, they don't have Myles Gaskin last week. They had a tough time running the ball on the road. Now they're home. I think Jake Browning's a different quarterback at home. This team's going to play differently at home. As Coach, you said, teams are different when they play on home than they play on the road. I think Jake Browning will rebound in this football game. I think defensively, if you look at Washington, giving up 12 points, that's not an embarrassment. You're supposed to win games like that. So Washington's defense is still there, and I think Stanford's going to have a tough time scoring on them. KJ Costello has been hot, particularly last week, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, but I still think Washington will find a way to pull it out 33-26 at home.
I think that KJ Costello is having a tremendous year. He's a sophomore, and it's unfortunate that Bryce Love has not been able to be up to expectation. This is a little bit different Stanford team than what we're used to. They can't run the football this year, Mark, and they can't stop the run. Those are two things that they can always do. They can run the ball, stop the run. They played fit. That's not the case. So I give them a lot of credit, and I love Coach Shaw. I think he's an outstanding person. I think he's a great football coach. However, let's look at Washington. I think that Browning has not progressed the way that everybody expected him to, and particularly in big games. He had a very, very poor performance last week, throwing the interception right near the end of the game when they had a chance to win it. But Washington's defense is very good. I'd pick Washington to win the football game for two reasons. One, they're at home, and two, they must win this game to stay alive in the race. If Stanford wins this football game, they're still dead in the race. There's no way in this world they're going to win the division, because if they end up with two losses, Washington State would end up with two losses. Washington State beat them head-to-head. So really, Stanford's 3 games behind. On the other hand, if Washington beats Stanford and then beats Oregon State, and then they play Washington State for the right to go, because Washington State has 1 loss. If they lose to Washington, that would be 2 losses. So I look for Washington to beat Stanford 34-28.
Well, they're playing for pride, playing for a chance. And if I'd have asked you gentlemen in week 1, or told you gentlemen in week 1 that the only 2 teams from the Pac-12 in the current top 25 would be number 8 Washington State and number 15 Utah, you know what? Stranger things have happened, but that's the nature of college football, and that's why we love it. And I really have to love our 5th Rapid 5 game. You know why? Because this game is about, this is a championship game in a way for Air Force. And they are headed up to Michie Stadium and Army and West Point. And Air Force right now is 3-5. Army is 6-2, and we've seen them roll. Oh, by the way, one of those 2 losses is in overtime to number 8 Oklahoma. And Kendall Hopkins Jr. in Army, they are running the ball, and they're finding ways to win. They know how to win. Air Force, not so much. But Air Force did beat Navy. And the way the Commander-in-Chief Trophy criteria works, you win 2 games. Now, I don't like this because, Coach, this is the whole kiss your sister brother thing. If it ends in a tie, they all share it. Well, I don't like that. You know what? I don't think Air Force likes that either. Air Force is going to do what they can because they are playing for a trophy. And then after that, they've got 3 more games, so they're still playing for a bowl. Army has got to beat Air Force, and then they got to go beat the midshipmen if they want that trophy. 2 similar offenses. Isaiah Sanders, he's throwing a little bit more than Kendall Hopkins Jr. Thrown for 4 touchdowns, run for 6. Kendall Hopkins Jr. is leading a rushing attack, which is number 1, number 2, number 3 in the country every other week. It just kind of goes back and forth. So, Mark, talk to us about what's going to go on up in your home state up north in New York at West Point.
Well, let's just put it like this. Jeff Monkins did a terrific job as a head coach at Army. The last 3 years, they've been bowl eligible. They've gone to the bowl. They're going to a bowl this year. He took over a 2-win football team. He's turned this program around from the bottom to the top. They believe right now in Army they're playing great football. Kelvin Hopkins Jr., the quarterback, not only throwing the ball, but running the football, getting the job done offensively. But, Coach, this is what's more important to me. Defensively, they're getting stops and getting off the field. The last 4 games, they're averaging only giving up 14.5 points a game. So they're doing it on both sides of the ball. When you can run the football and you can stop the run and you can keep the opponent under 17 points or less, you've got great opportunities to win the football game. I've got Army winning this game 20-19.
I agree with you. I think Army's a very good football team defensively. They're very good on 3rd yards, 3rd down offense and defense. But, Air Force is really coming on, Mark. Not only did they beat Navy 35-7, but they threw the ball, and there wasn't anything fluky about that. I mean, that was a decisive win. In the last couple of weeks, they lost a very, very close football game to San Diego State. They had Boise State. I think they lost 48-38. The question is, can they stop Army? And it's going to be up there at West Point. I look for Army to win the football game. 27-25, I think it's going to be a very close football game. It's going to be a great contest. You want to watch it because the one thing about the academies, they're so class, and they play the game the way it should be played as far as sportsmanship and no one-upmanship and all these other things, pounding your chest. They just go play the game. It's going to be a great game to watch. It's going to be a very, very interesting game.
Well, when that game's over, they'll stand shoulder to shoulder, singing each other's alma mater at each end of the field, and it doesn't get any better than that. Well, that is our Week 10 Rapid 5 contest, and it's going to be an exciting week because a lot of things are going to change next week depending on who wins and who loses. But I'm going to tell you, I'm going to let Mark and Coach, starting with you, Coach, tell us who are our big winners this week on the Crowdline College Football Show contest. Coach, talk to us, please.
Well, number 3, my winner is Philip Anderson. He receives $50 from Amazon gift card. Number 2 is Joe Sawchuk. He gets $75 from Amazon gift card. And number 1, Robert Bell, receives $100 Amazon gift card. Congratulations, all 3 of you.
My Rapid 5 contest top 3 winners. Number 3, Jay Wee, a $50 gift card. Number 2, Terry Chawa, a $75 Amazon gift card. And number 1, Niguel Everman, a $100 Amazon gift card. Congratulations to everyone.
Well, you know what? Money won is so much better than money earned sometimes. I wish I was a better golfer. But anyway, I will tell you what I am excited about, though, is talk about these players that you're thinking about, the attaboys. Who gets a pat on the back from Coach? Who gets a pat on the back from Mark? And Mark, why don't you go first on that? Who's your attaboy this week?
Well, this week my first attaboy goes to a guy that we're probably going to see this weekend, quarterback Terry Wilson from Kentucky. They finally let him throw the football when they had to. He threw for 267 yards and a touchdown. Congratulations, Terry Wilson. Great come-from-behind victory last week against Missouri. My second one is Oklahoma State quarterback. Huge game. Taylor Cornelius. Guess what? Gets it done against Texas. Even though it was at home and Coach said that your offense didn't play well in the second half, it doesn't matter to me. You played great 4 quarters and you won the game against Texas. Congratulations, Terry Cornelius of Oklahoma State.
Each week when I go to give my attaboys, there's so many of them. Like last week, I could have given one to Jalen Ferguson, the outstanding defensive end from Louisiana Tech, and had 4 sacks as they beat Florida Atlantic. But my number 1 goes to Houston quarterback King. 449 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, rushed the ball 12 times for 2 touchdowns and 145 yards. My second one goes to Josh Allen, the outstanding linebacker from Kentucky. He had 11 tackles, 9 solos, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. He's been a great football player this entire year. But, you know, there's so many others. How about the quarterback from Oregon State? He gets in there, throws for 300 yards. They upset Colorado. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm sorry we only have to limit to 2, but congratulations to King and Allen. Great performance.
Well, gentlemen, I tell you, it's going to be a great performance. There's a whole bunch of people in Lexington this weekend going to show up to meet you and talk about the Crowdline. I'm pretty excited. But I want to know, other than that, because I know that's probably number 1, what are you looking forward to in college football this weekend?
For me, it's going to be the SEC playoff. That's basically what it is. You've got Alabama and LSU. You've got Kentucky and Georgia. It's the SEC playoff to go. Who's going to go to the SEC championship game? So for me, it's going to be fun to watch.
I look forward each and every week to seeing which team shows up. The only team that showed up each and every week is Alabama and Clemson. I mean, you know that they're going to play very, very well. Everybody else has been up and down the center, and that's how upsets occur. I guarantee that there'll be at least 3 major upsets this week because you have teams that are fighting to get in the bowl. And we're reaching the stage of the season, Mark, where the only 2 types of teams, those that have something to accomplish and those whose only salvation of the season lies in ruining somebody else's hopes and dreams and expectations. That's why this is going to be an exciting weekend.
Gentlemen, I'm just looking forward to people playing college football and playing it hard like the folks I saw last week at homecoming at Center College. And I'm going to give a shout out to when Jalen Hibbs, a wide receiver from Center College, 8 catches, school record 221 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Coach Andy Fry and the Center Colonels went big over Millsaps. But more importantly, I love watching people play football like that and get together and enjoy it for what it's worth. And what it really, really means is, you know what? It's a game. Don't forget it's a game. And let's enjoy it. Enjoy each other. I'm looking forward to linking up with you gentlemen this weekend. We're going to have a great time in Lexington. I look forward to hearing people talk about what they're doing on the crowdsign.com. Look at our videos. Compete in the contest because these winners are adding up. They're adding up. We're getting more and more and more. Gentlemen, it's been a great week. I look forward to seeing you. We're going to have a good one. God bless, and thank you.
From the 30, Johnson out of the shotgun. Dropping back, pressure on, throwing over the middle. Has Williams. 10, 5, touchdown!